It's the Week 5 edition of the Coach's Corner here on Rivalry Family Media. Welcome back once again. Time to start your week here as we get set to preview Leominster playing host to Westborough on a homecoming Saturday special. All that coming up as we progress through this edition of the Coach's Corner. I'm Todd Robbins, joined as always by Leominster High School head coach Devin Gates, and great to have you with us. Coach, we're going to start first with some football stories around the nation, and then we'll turn our attention to previewing, or should say post-scripting last week's game and previewing ahead to the Westborough Leominster game this week. A couple of stories. First of all, last night, of course, you've got the Tom Brady returns. The Tom Brady Mac Jones matchup. You got everything people were hoping for, and then some. Ultimately ends up a Bucs win, a 19-17 Buccaneers over Patriots victory, and a missed field goal becomes the story of the football game at the tail end. But for those that are fantasy football watchers, and I think this speaks volumes, Mac Jones outpointed Tom Brady, but that doesn't mean that you win on the scoreboard in the end. What did you see? What did you think of the matchup?
I thought, as a coach watching that game, I thought the strategy involved with it was great. I thought Belichick did a great job with a defensive plan against Brady and disguising looks and changing the picture, the coverages and everything after the snap. And, so I thoroughly enjoyed watching the game. I thought it was well played on, both sides. There were obviously some times where it was a little sloppy, but that to be expected with the weather. But overall, I think I learned a lot more about Mac Jones than I did about Tom Brady, obviously, in that game. No, I think if you're a Pats fan, you're encouraged with what the future holds, and we stood toe to toe with one of the best teams in the league.
An ultimate passing of the torch moment at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. I agree. I was a bit surprised on the media coverage throughout the day today that there was a lot of Debbie Downers on the Mac Jones, not winning the football game or not coming back. I'm like, the guy's in his fourth game as the quarterback of a professional football team. He was playing Auburn a year ago this time. It's a very different sort of mentality a year later.
Very different. And the fact he threw, was it 19 straight completions that almost tied Brady's record for consecutive completions. That's no small feat there. It says he was dialed in, knew where his guys were supposed to be, and was making the throws on time. So I think there's a lot to be excited about.
Certainly a lot of energy in the world of football professionally. Let's turn our attention maybe a little closer to where we are. And of course, this story was not so much a Massachusetts story, but it was, and not just necessarily a football story, but this covered high school athletics. This was a Politico article I was reading over the weekend talking about student athletes being the latest target for vaccine mandates. Of course, there's all sorts of storylines out there about, getting students vaccinated, getting young people vaccinated. And the article in Politico was really focusing on how different states are really targeting student athletes, particularly in close contact sports. And now as they look ahead toward winter months, toward winter sports, being able to place mandates on students in order to get them, of course, vaccinated as kind of a carrot in order to compete in high school athletics. Obviously, you've been a coach at both the high school and the college level. You understand, where this kind of falls. And sometimes in order to get things to advance, mandates are required. Where do you come down on this as far as vaccine mandates go and kind of their tie now closely to high school athletics?
Well, that's a real tough one to weigh in on. You never want to take away anybody's right to choose it, any of that stuff at all too. But I'm always for the safety of everybody playing the game. If the experts are saying that's the safest way to proceed, then I think it's should be recommended that happen. The mandate is, I think it's tough. I think it's strong, especially in the infancy stages still of what the vaccine is and what the long-term effects could be. That's a real tough one, Todd. I'm not sure how how to really go about touching that one.
It clocks up there as one of the tougher topics we've ever discussed here on the Coach's Corner. Yeah, that goes back 10 seasons. But I
Yeah,
saw the
yeah,
story and I couldn't resist it. I mean, because I understand much the same way, governmental structures get all sorts of things done, right? I mean, the one you study in history is how did they move the drinking age from 18 to 21? They found a mandate with states, as it related to highway money, and that got the
yeah,
states to come along in that process. So it's not beyond governmental organizations to use these sorts of things. I think the tough part with interscholastic athletics being that way to, shall we say, strongly encourage compliance in order to, as kind of a condition or a precursor to compete is a very different approach. And I don't know that I know how I feel about it. I guess to me, if you don't want to have a vaccine mandate for your school district, I don't understand why you would entertain a vaccine mandate for your student athletes. What makes them any different than any other student in your school district? I think that would be my concern with the story.
for sure. I would agree with that. And again, I don't know what the right answer is there. Especially with the political and the climate that we're in with all this. That's a real tough decision for someone just to come out and say, hey, like, you, in order to play, you need to have it. I mean, I could obviously see why, and not that I disagree with the premise behind it, but that's a loaded topic and a loaded question, and one that I think requires a lot more thought and data than just saying, hey, we need to go and do that.
That comes from a health teacher as well, which I do think fits into the grand scheme of this conversation as well. But certainly, I think your main point is the most important one. We need a lot more data and a lot more information, and there's going to be a lot more learning we're all going to do before we reach the end, whatever that may be, of this circumstance. But see, we can touch on all sorts of things. We can hit the full gamut here on Coach's Corner. Let's turn our attention to last week's game. It's a 33-20 Shepherd Hill win over Leominster at Doyle Field. Shepherd Hill improves their record to 3-1. Leominster falls to 1-3 on this early aspect of the season. And there's a number of things, Coach, that I think we can look at. But if we look at the first half of action, I think the thing that stands out most is, of course, Shepherd Hill's ability to run the football. They had 5 different running backs that ran the football. They came in all different shapes and sizes, different formations, seemingly coming from a number of directions. Certainly the highlight early in the football game is Josh Harrison, 25-yard, then a 79-yard touchdown run that certainly, at least quickly, piled up the points and made it an uphill climb for your team.
Yeah, I mean, they capitalized on field position and their, made the most of their possessions in the first half for sure. I've said it before, and in Shepherd Hill, they force you to play perfect. And, when we talk, gaps down football, we talk about it every week, right? You have to have 11 guys fitting in where they're supposed to fit in. If not, one person's not there, and you see it when they hit a cutback lane or whatnot, and it's tough because they're getting guys downfield and they're getting hats on everybody that they need to. And, they do what they do and they do it well. And, they really force you to have to play a perfect game to beat them, and we, certainly did not play that in the first half or first 3 quarters. Not that we did in the fourth quarter either, but at least, we came and had a little bit of fight and started making some plays there. They're a well-coached football team, a tough football team. And, we're better than what we showed. And I'm trying to get our kids to understand that we're a lot better than what we showed in the first 3 quarters. And to trust what we're doing and when they're going out there to make plays. Going back and watching the game, I said we win the line of scrimmage. We would at least slow them down and give ourselves a chance to possess the ball and go down there and score a little bit. And I think we just took too long to kind of feel things out. We didn't attack the way that that I would have liked, and that's we got to correct that. Starting with myself and the approach each week with coaching.
Cutback lanes, I think, are an interesting point too, as there were a number of circumstances where it seemed like the play maybe was going in a direction and that your defense had molded and adapted and stopped kind of that direction as an option. And then all of a sudden, there goes the running back against a grain of what ends up being nothing because, of course, the defense had sealed off one side of the field. When you see that happening, of course, as a defender, having never been in the circumstance, I got to imagine your field of vision at that point is fairly tight. You see the direction of the flow of the play running into, of course, what you have set for your trap, your wall, your picket fence that you've built that they're going to run into and become ensnared in. And then all of a sudden, there it goes back in the other direction. How do you correct at that moment when so much has been committed in one direction?
It's tough at that point. We harped all week long in practice about having good body position when you're filling the gap, and make sure that you're using the defenders on your inside for help there too. If you get too far, if you scrape too far to the inside, you don't have a lot of help back to the outside. If you let them beat you, out to the outside, and then it becomes a foot race, and it's not a great situation for us. So staying square, being able to fill the gap with good football position, being coiled, in a strong position to make a play. It's what we practice all week long, and obviously it's a lot tougher in the heat of the moment when you realize that guys want to come up. They go. There's guys made mistakes because they wanted to go and make plays. Our guys really want to make plays. They want to help us win. It's not for lack of trying. That's for sure. It's for guys really want to go in there and make something happen. And that's when you get guys overcommitting and having these cutback lanes and stuff like that too. So we got to make sure that we're doing a good job of explaining to our guys, the importance of it and how they fit in, and what, we talk about doing your job to the T, right? You don't have to do, we don't want you to play outside of yourself or do more than we're asking you to do, because that's when we get in trouble.
A tip of the cap, too, while we're mentioning names, Romeo Holland both was a presence on offense and on defense. On the defensive side of the ball for Shepherd Hill, I think that was an expectation that I certainly went in with in the football game, is that you were going to see him causing havoc on the defensive side of the ball. I think the offensive side of the ball might have been the part that surprised me more than anything else, as he got himself into open space, created some lanes, powered the football when necessary, and then when he got into those open spaces, had the breakaway speed in order to get away from tackles.
Yeah, he's faster than you think he is. You know what? He does play at the high motor on defense, but offensively, when he gets the open speed and when he gets, when he's running that picket fence, and when he sees that alley, he hits it with some speed and determination for sure. He's a good football player. Defensively, they kind of scheme their defense around them where we can't double team up to him and stuff like that. So it makes it hard to get a hat on him sometimes. And he's over the last couple of years, he's really caused some issues for us. I thought we did a good job at times of accounting for him. But again, he's one of those kids that you're not gonna keep under wraps for a whole entire game. He's gonna pop up someplace. He's gonna make a play, and he made a play a couple times in some big situations. Kudos to him. He's a good player.
No question about it. It was another point that ties on to that Coach DiGeronimo made, of course, about the way 2 weeks could be somewhat the same yet sort of different. Take two players, both wearing jersey 44, Connor Salmon 2 weeks ago, Romeo Holland, of course, in this past week for Shepherd Hill, and run similar style, at least for the sake of the conversation. And yet last week, against Neshoba, or 2 weeks ago against Neshoba, circumstances where the ball never got to the running back, of course, because your defense created this chaotic time, of course, slowed down their ability to advance the football. Flip that a week later, same kind of circumstance. The ball finds its way into the hands of the running back, and all of a sudden it's a slightly different circumstance where your defense now has to, of course, pick up and make a play, because, of course, they hadn't gotten there to break up the handoff at that moment in time. Talk about the comparison between those two.
Sure. I think they're, Connor Salmon's he's a good player, obviously, and a big tough kid. I think Romeo Holland's a little bit more of a balanced kid in terms of his weight, how he uses his weight, his legs. And I think the way offensively they're both run oriented offenses. What Shepherd Hill does is they basically have no splits on the offensive line, so it's really tough to kind of get the penetration that we got against Neshoba. And then with you pair that with all the the movement in the backfield. It's tough. You got to have good eye discipline. You got to be able to when you do get in. And there were times where we got in, and if that was a different team, maybe we're making a play in the backfield. But because there's guys crossing, and you lose sight of it for a second, and we tackle the wrong guy, we miss a big play, and then as soon as you do that, they're playing 11 on 10, and it's off to the races. So the margin for ever was that small in this game, where we thought we were close to making some really big plays, and just we're a split second behind something, or a fraction of a second behind something, or our eyes are looking at the wrong thing, and and we missed something. So that's when I really mean it when I say they make you play perfect, like they make you play perfect every play.
Something to be said for that. If we were to discount quarters 1 through 3 and just turn our attention to the fourth quarter, as you said, it still may not have clocked in at perfect, but certainly it was something that you could work with, both as from a player's perspective and from a coaching perspective. Certainly that fourth quarter showed the capabilities of what this offense, at the very least, but defense as well, could do, as this Leominster football program does possess the skill. And of course, that's got to build some confidence. That has got to be something that says to a group of student athletes, we could clearly do this. We've seen ourselves do it. We could look at this fourth quarter and prove that we've done it. We just need to recreate that through quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4, an entire football game.
Yeah, and that was our message to the guys today after watching film and kind of going over our plan for the week, is that we can't wait for our backs to be against the wall to be able to execute like this. We feel that desperation. All of a sudden we're going out there and we have guys that will step up and make plays. There can't be a disconnect between, the first quarter when that happens and then the fourth quarter when we absolutely need it. We need it, starting from the opening kickoff. So that's what we're going to stress this week. Guys going out and making plays now, not waiting for things to happen in a game to see how it unfolds, to see how we're going to play in the fourth quarter. Like, that can't be how we execute and how we play a football game. We can't be, sit idly by and wait till till we have to make moves. That's not going to win many football games for us. We have to go out and be better at, being on the attack, being an aggressor, going out and making plays. And I think that fourth quarter showed us some stuff where, now we can have a little bit more confidence opening some things up a little bit. We had some injuries happen where, we had a game plan and injuries came up and kind of got us out of what we wanted to do originally. And then it was next man up. And that next man up is Jake Tossie in the game, and he threw the ball well. It made some big plays at times, and got the ball in the hands of our playmakers, and that was encouraging to see. In terms of our coaching staff, looking at the quarterbacks the last couple of weeks, is between him and Brian Aguilar, kind of splitting some time and seeing who's doing what better. I think Jake took steps forward and showing us that he's the guy that we need to have in there to stabilize the offense and let us get to our full potential offensively. Not to say Brian doesn't bring an element to the offense. He obviously does. He's does some good things at quarterback, but he's also a really good receiver too. So he's obviously going to be a big part of this offense moving forward as well. But again, some encouraging things, some things to build on. And that's what we're going to try to do this week.
Very rarely can I say that a statistic is this far upside down, but I do still, even though I'm going to say you had 3 interceptions inside the 5-yard line, not a good thing, but yet the passing game just seemed like it was your best performance of the season. I think if you were to kind of remove the conversation of the 3 interceptions inside of the 5-yard line or at or inside the 5-yard line, the passing game looked the most dynamic it did all year long. It just hasn't quite gotten all the way to that full execution in each of the individual drives you were looking at.
Yeah, and a lot of that was due to the desperation we're at in the fourth quarter, trying to make some plays and forcing some things in where normally we would take, something underneath or try to dial something else up. And that's on me as a coach, calling the plays that, I'm trying to get to our playmakers and, asking, Jake, who stepped in here, to go and, throw the ball and make something happen. So, as a play caller, that's certainly due to a lot of desperation in the fourth quarter, trying to get the ball down the field. What's exciting about that is now with a week of practice and trying to concentrate on the passing game a little bit more than we have in the last couple of weeks. I could really have those conversations with the quarterbacks and Jake about, where we see where the ball should be ending up this week, on a regular down, on a regular, pass play when we're, when the game isn't in the balance, like how are we going to read something? How are we, what's the progression going to be like? How are we going to move in the pocket? So for me as a coordinator, I think there's plenty of room to grow here and to really kind of narrow the focus of, what we're going to accomplish in the pass game for the quarterbacks.
And that is certainly something that will be on tap for this coming week. 33-20, Shepherd Hill defeats Leominster at Doyle Field. As we said, Shepherd Hill improves their record to 3-1 on the year. Leominster falls to 1-3. Coach, I said this to you before we came on the air, but I'll say it again here on the air. I think there were a lot of believers that when that ball checked up for the, what turned out to be a well-positioned, well-placed kickoff in that fourth quarter, there very much seemed like there was no stopping your football team despite what had happened prior to it.
Yeah, I think we had that attitude, like we weren't going to win this football game, and we weren't going to lose this football game. Excuse me. And the guys believe, and that's the great thing I love about our football team, is because there's never any quit in these guys. We may have started slow, and we may have not have come out and executed the way we wanted to in the first three quarters, but it wasn't like they checked out of the game completely. It wasn't like they just kind of threw their hands up and said, "Oh, this one's over," when we were down 27-0 at the start of the fourth. They didn't do that. They haven't done that all year. Didn't do that in the spring. They continue to fight. They continue to come back, and weather the storm, and roll the punches, whatever other cliche you want to throw in there that gets the point across. But it's true. Like, we have a lot of guys who are warriors and will go out there and make plays, when we need to. And it's just doing that on a consistent basis that's going to be the focus moving forward. But I'm certainly not upset with the fight that this team has, and the the willingness to keep fighting when our backs are really up against the wall.
No question about that, indeed. So we turn our attention, Coach, to week 5 of action. Of course, we mentioned you play host to Westborough on a special Saturday edition for homecoming. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to ask you first about the week 5 game that is the other half of our broadcast doubleheader this week. And that, of course, features a 2-2 Fitchburg team traveling to a 3-1 Marlborough team at Kelleher Field on Friday night. And these are two teams, obviously, that you are familiar with and who have had very interesting stories throughout the year. Fitchburg, of course, drops a 44-9 decision to Lincoln Sudbury on the road last week. Powerful, of course, team to even their record at 2-2. And meanwhile, Marlborough goes into this battle of the unbeatens, the 2-3-0 teams in this region, Grafton and Marlborough, and people had expectations of where this game was going to go. And it ends up a 41-20 Grafton win, which I think only triple underscores just how serious a football team Grafton is and what a force to be reckoned with they are. But now, bouncing back out of that, both teams off of losses that they are not going to be happy about, they now get to exact their revenge on one another. What are your initial thoughts on Marlborough and Fitchburg coming in?
I think it's going to be a great football game. There's two strong offensive lines, two run-oriented programs, two teams that are coached really well, and I think that's going to be quite the battle between the two schools. I've seen Marlborough on film. They played Shepherd Hill, and we've seen them against some other schools, and they don't do a heck of a lot in terms of formations and plays. They just do what they do really, really, really well. If Fitchburg's at full power, I mean, we saw them close up in person. They're a real tough football team. So, I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup, and it's I think a very important game for both those programs.
Oh, no question about that. That will be our Friday night game, October the 8th on the K Zone. Usual time slot for us, 6 o'clock, our countdown to kickoff 1 hour before kickoff, starting at 6 on Friday night, October the 8th, followed at 7, kickoff of Fitchburg at Marlborough from Kelleher Field in Marlborough on Friday night. And then we turn our attention to Saturday, which is, of course, the game that is featured here on our Coach's Corner, and that is Leominster and Westborough. Saturday, similar time slot, 7 o'clock at Doyle Field is the kickoff. 6 o'clock will be our countdown on AM 1280 and 105.3 FM, along with WPKZstream.com and Leominster TV. But Coach, here we go. You've had your chance to do your video study. You'll be doing video study all week long and do some education with your team as well. But here comes a Westborough team, knew that was going to happen, who are coming into this battle with you, who certainly are not pleased with where they are either. They are also 1-3, a week 1 loss by a 53-6 margin at Shepherd Hill, then a 13-12 win at home versus North Middlesex in the waning seconds, then a 50-point loss at Grafton in week 3, and last week a 27-0 loss versus Neshoba, also at home. So they've had the kind of even splits, 2 on the road, 2 at home, and they have come out 1-3 at the end of it with just that 13-12 win versus North Middlesex to show for it. A team that has also got a new coaching staff that is trying to, of course, establish a program and continue to grow from there. What's your first kind of top of the line look at Westborough as we get set to preview them?
Well, and schematically, they give you some things that are challenging, especially on defense. They're on a 3-5-3 defense, so there's a lot of guys in the box, and they make you really have to to run the football strong, in between the tackles to be able to be successful there too. And they make it hard to get to the edges. We've seen that in some of their film. Teams that try to toss the ball outside or get to the perimeter, it's tough. They just kind of outflank you out there. But that being said, too, that leaves you kind of vulnerable on the back end. In the secondary, they play some cover three. They play some loose man coverage. So it's all going to be kind of how feeling out how they're going to attack us. I mean, out of that 3-5-3, they'll also shift kind of a 4-4 alignment, which we're more familiar with. And we've blocked that up. A couple times this year so far. Against Doherty, against against Neshoba. And again against Shepherd Hill too. So it'll be interesting to see how they play us there and play our different formations. As far as their size, I think they're kind of an undersized team. They certainly have to have some scrappy players, some guys that are playing tough. They've had some tough matchups so far. But Coach Beveridge is a good coach. He was at Tantascwa for a long time. He's had success there. They've gotten better each week. I've watched them. If we don't come to play and we don't take this game seriously, then we're going to be in for a pretty big fight. They do some things offensively. They don't mind taking some chances and running some gimmicks and trying to get some guys loose. So offensively, you kind of have to keep your head on a swivel because they'll try to do some stuff and get you out of position. So they do some stuff that give offensive and defenses problems. They just had lack of execution, but that's gotten better each week. So we have to come and be ready to play and be ready for anything.
Let's talk about that math reference for the week here, and that would be, of course, the layperson sitting there going 4-4, 3-5. That still adds up to 8, and they're still somewhere close to the line. What's the distinctive difference? I mean, obviously it's one more person on the line and one less linebacker. Mathematically, I think people get it, but what is the true difference between those two alignments and how, of course, an offense would line up against it?
Well, the 3-5, which we've seen a lot with Westborough and a little bit with Neshoba, is they have three defensive linemen that are down, and then they walk 2 outside linebackers up. So it looks like they have 5 guys on the line, and then 3 linebackers in the interior of the box there. So 8 guys and that are within 5 yards of the ball that really force you to have to block things up and account for all 8 of them to be able to move the football well. And then the 4-4, it's exactly kind of what it sounds like. There's 4 guys down on the defensive line, and there's 4 linebackers across. Gives you a little bit more space there to make some stuff happen. But with those outside backers on the perimeter, it makes running outside tough. So you have to scheme some stuff up in terms of formations and in terms of borrowing blockers to try to account for those guys. And that's in the run game. So we got some work to do in terms of trying to account for those guys on the perimeter and trying to put our best foot forward in terms of running the football.
So certainly seems like that will be the question is, are the extra players coming toward the interior of the line, or are they going to try to get you off of the exterior of the line?
So in that 3-5-3, there's about 6 guys that are playing in the interior, and the 2 other outside backers are trying to keep everything funneled into those 6 guys in the interior. So that's kind of the biggest, if I could paint the best picture to explain it, that's probably kind of it. So they got 6 guys in the interior, trying to make plays in the in the A, B, and C gaps on each side. And then the outside backers are out there trying to keep everything funneled in. And got the secondary, the 3 defensive backs on the back end playing anything that happens outside there. So it just angle wise and numbers wise, it causes some issues when you're trying to run the ball outside. And when they have the angle on you to try to force things inside, even if it's not as strong a player as you have out there, it can cause some issues. So we got to make sure that we account for that. Either run game or pass game, to kind of give a different look to try to get them to back up off the ball a little bit so we can try to get an edge to get to the outside.
So for the G-rated description, then you could call it a herding mentality, or for the more R-rated crowd, you would say it's a pack hunting mentality to drive folks toward the other 6.
It's a pincer movement. That's kind of what it is. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. As we look certainly at your defense, that is, of course, week in and week out, devised some schemes to really, of course, give fits to the opposition and to generate these opportunities for your offense. Talk to me a little bit about, of course, what your defense is going to be scheming up against this week on Westborough's side of the ball.
Well, it's really a complete, contrast of what we what we played this past week. So
Why wouldn't it be? That's this league,
why
isn't
would
it?
and we don't face too many true spread teams. Doherty used to be one now, and they did a little bit too, but they ran some I formation and stuff. So, as far as a true spread team, this is probably the closest that we're going to have on our schedule here. They do a lot with 11 personnel, so having one tight end in there, 3 receivers, 1 running back. And they'll go, trips, 3 receivers one side, 1 on the other, or balance with 2 on 2 on one side, 2 on the other. So they kind of try to get you to shift your numbers around, and then they want to run where you aren't. If you're going to overshift and overplay formations, with the personnel that they have, it's more advantageous for them to try to do that and create unbalanced in the defense, unbalanced numbers in the defense, and try to run your play away from that. I think that's what they're going to try to do, with some of their formations. And we got to be able to account for that, and make sure we have guys at the point of attack. Guys ready in the cutback lane. If I'm watching the game, which I know they are from this past week, they're going to talk about cutback lanes. They're going to talk about that stuff and try to get some of those guys loose, because they got some guys who can move. If we're not there, when we need to be, at the time we need to be there, it will cause some issues. So we need to tighten some things up there, and just kind of be ready for what they do. I think athletically we match up with them really well. In the secondary, and at the linebacker position, we just got to play our brand of football, not worry about too much, and just kind of just go out there and try to make plays.
I've worked with a number of coaches over the years, and somehow we work our way through keys. We hit offense, we hit defense, and then we can't ever miss special teams. And your special teams play over 4 weeks, if you want a bright spot, something that really we don't spend enough time, harping on, although we've tried to do our best over the last so many weeks, has been special teams play. Each and every week successively now, it seems, there has been a special teams play to talk about, if not more. Certainly, it's going to be another requirement going into this week.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kept us in games. It's won games for us so far. The kickoff team has done well. I think we could get better kickoff return team. I think we're missing some big plays there where, we're 1 block away. So, we're going to work on that this week. And, punt when we had to punt has been well. I mean, we went from having to punt, I don't know how many times against Neshoba, too many, to only punting once against, Shepherd Hill. And, so it's all about when that number gets called up, we're going to have to execute. We were 3 onside kicks attempts against Shepherd Hill. And, so, we have the guys there to execute and do the stuff that we need. We've got some guys making some plays there. So just looking to keep on progressing with that, adding if we need anything, and, making sure that we got everything covered, and just make sure we're blocking everything up soundly. I think there's some plays to be made there in the return game that we haven't made yet that, we've been, like I said, we've been really, really close. And I'd like to see us try to expand on that a little bit.
Coming up on Saturday, it's homecoming at historic Doyle Field. Leominster hosts Westborough, 7 o'clock, the kickoff. You can come on down and be a part of it out at historic Doyle Field. Weather forecast looks pretty good. Hopefully it holds throughout the rest of the week, and you can bring your smart and able device to get your coverage on AM 1280 and 105.3 FM, WPKZstream.com, and Leominster TV along as well. Coach, the one last thing I will ask you about, it's always the case, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. The hardest part, I think, about these games, whether it's Thanksgiving that has the extended halftime or homecoming that has the extended halftime, is that if you get things cooking in the first half of the football game, there is a built-in icer right in the middle of the game. And of course, it is that all-important and incredibly, important aspect of high school experience. Of course, this is what differentiates it from any other level, right? You have these things, these events, these milestones that are so important for student athletes to experience, and students in general to experience, beyond just obviously the athletic experience that they have. But it's certainly, make no mistake about it, it will be a challenge that both teams will navigate, regardless of who's got it cooking before halftime there is a time period where you will go idle during that halftime period and have to somehow maintain focus while some people may be involved with some of the festivities and then have to work your way back to football on the other side of that for the second half.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. I'm not overly worried about that. Our guys are usually pretty good at maintaining focus during those times. Homecoming at Doyle is so special, and all those other groups, clubs, band, cheerleaders, dance group. I mean, they all work incredibly hard to go out there and perform. So they deserve their time out there. The band has been playing after the games too as well, and they do a great job. So that whole atmosphere is really important for the crowd, the community, for the whole school. And we'll take care of what we need to do football wise. But again, obviously, very important for them to have their time, and we'll do what we got to do.
We'll add our kudos to both the return of live music as part of the environment, the return of the cheerleading squad as part of the environment, and obviously the return of the fans in the community as well. It's all part of what creates that extra special weekly experience in high school football. And my, did we miss it just a handful of months ago, and are we so happy to see it all back together again. Sure. Yep. No week begins without your preview right here on the Coach's Corner. Again, doubleheader action on the radio, AM 1280, 105.3 FM, WPKZstream.com. Friday night, October the 8th, Fitchburg travels to Marlborough. We'll have that game for you coming up this week. Kate and I will be joined by Mike Pellin, filling in for Bill Thomas in the analyst role. And then coming up on Saturday, it is homecoming at historic Doyle Field. If you can't be there, you tune into the coverage. If you are there, bring the coverage with you as well. AM 1280, 105.3 FM, WPKZ Stream, and Leominster TV for Westborough travels to Leominster, and it is a homecoming for our own Bill Thomas. We'll be back with Kate and I in the booth on Saturday night as well. We're looking forward to that as well. Coach, until week 6, I will see you right back here next week. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. For Leominster High School head coach Devin Gates, I am Todd Robbins saying thank you so very much for joining us, and until next week, so long, everybody.